Some conversations will be mind-blowing and you'll sit there and you'll have the most profound change.
Hi Zoe, thanks for joining me on 52 Conversations. It's great to see you. How are you?
Oh, good morning, Janice. It's so good to be here. I'm really well, and I'm in the UK enjoying the late summer right now, which is feeling so good.
There's something about the late summer when it rocks up in the UK, isn't it, that just kind of makes you feel alive and okay.
It's just magical because, I woke up a couple of mornings and it's like super misty and it's almost foggy and you can't see anything, and there's this blanket, it's all dewy, and then an hour later when the sun burns it off, it's just like blue sky, super beautiful. So yeah, it's quite magical actually. I'm really enjoying it.
Is the enjoyment of it all. So for people that don't know you, I'm going to ask you to just say who you are and what it is that, I know why I've asked you to chat on here, and that's because a sharing of kind of passions and purpose that cross over, and because you're a beautiful person, of course. But you just kind of tell people a little bit about yourself and then we can delve in from there.
Yeah, well, it's always an interesting one, isn't it, to introduce yourself and who you are and what you do. And yeah, well, I guess sort of the normal way to introduce myself would be sort of to say what I do in this life, I guess. And primarily, I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner working with acupuncture. But it really has taken me on a very deep journey. And it's, in a way, kind of my expression of who I am, and my work has really kind of gone into a very holistic sense of, being an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine practitioner, because it's including, yoga, body movement, qigong, herbs, body work, meditation, acupuncture, diet, nutrition, all of this. And so I do work in all of these different modalities, and but it comes down essentially and kind of narrows down to come under the umbrella of Chinese medicine. So that's, what I do for my work, is what I do for my pleasure, it's what I do for my joy, for my hobby.
It's all encompassing, right?
Yeah, it really is. It's a full lifestyle as well as just a career, if you like, and it's such a beautiful, deep, as well as a medicine and a science and an art. It's really a deep philosophy of life as well, and so I really lean into that sort of more spiritual understanding of it. And it's continuing to take me, on a journey and a ride in this life. And I pray and I hope and I think it always will. And I think that's also why I got into it.
I think it's that thing of peeling back layers, isn't it? That there's always another layer. It's like, oh yeah, I love this, and I found something, and then it's like, oh gosh, there's something else there as well. And what can that be?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, because it's working with, all of it is a bit of a buzzword, but really body, mind, spirit. And really, as you sort of come into the body and then into our mental well-being and our spirit and all of this, it's and you need all the pieces in a way to help to create a really balanced, holistic way of living. So it's all necessary, and it's all brilliant. Yeah,
I think it's really interesting the way you put that, because I think lots of people, they know that there's kind of a piece missing. They don't necessarily know what the piece is. So everybody in some way is looking for that one thing, or that something that's going to change everything. So how do you help with the people that you work with to help them, let's say, identify the missing bit? Because I'm sure that's what you do in a lot of the work that you do, that through the way that you work, you help them explore the different parts of themselves.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I guess the obviously it's very individual for everybody, but I feel, and in my kind of practice and my experience with people, is a lot, or maybe always, our difficulties, they come down from our unexpressed emotions, essentially, and how we whether it's from our childhood, our work, our relationship with ourself, which is so crucial, which again, is created through our lived experience and our relationships as well. But really coming to terms with, we as a society, we're not encouraged to be sensitive or to feel or to express our emotions in a healthy way. And people suppress them, and whether that's grief or anger or even joy or and what it does is I understand from a sort of Chinese medicine, almost a quantum physics kind of understanding, is that these emotions carry a frequency and a vibration, and the higher they are, the more that they move, and things can keep changing, and there's a transformation, and there's no stagnation. But if these emotions are suppressed and they become quite dense, they turn into physical matter, because this is how everything works in this world, and then that starts to crystallize, and that creates congestion or pain, inflammation, certain moods, cancer even, all of this. So really it's coming to terms with those parts of ourselves that we haven't been able to meet, or we haven't had permission to meet them, or we've been so numb that we didn't even know that they were there.
That's really interesting. I was talking to my friend Nancy yesterday, and she has a background in many things, and her latest sort of thing that she's taken a deep dive into is creating friendships, and how the art of friendship making has literally been lost. And it was really, really interesting. Some of the things that she was saying are kind of crossover to what you're saying, and it was where that literally as children people have been dumbed down. So don't do this, don't share that joy, don't share that passion. So then they become constricted, and then they wonder perhaps, well, why is it that I'm like this, and why don't I have friendships, and why don't I connect with my community in the same way? So there's all those parallels that are crossing over, aren't there?
Oh, definitely. And it's obviously for men as well, but particularly for women, we create serotonin in us by connecting, by sharing, by talking. So it's really, really essential for a woman to be, with her women company. And that's why we like to talk, and that's why it's important for us. And that connection, I mean, for men as well, but it's so real, and it's so essential for our well-being. We're pack animals, we're tribes people, really underneath it all, that's how we live. And that's, that sharing, we are, emotional beings, quite literally, and we pick up on people's, energy, and they help to bring us up, or they can bring us down, or, it's really, it's very, very important. And if we isolate ourselves, without intention to do that, it can be very, very detrimental. Yeah.
So have you seen a rise, dare I say it, the ongoing world situation of the whole COVID thing? We can't ignore it, because it's ever present, and it keeps coming back in different ways. So I'm guessing for you must have had an increase of people reaching out to you because they're stuck in stagnant places, spaces, missing that community and that connection.
Oh, definitely, Janice. I really feel like the pandemic almost of today now is depression, isolation, and anxiety in people, and that's, it's just so harmful, actually, what's been happening, regardless of COVID, obviously, but the way, in the sense that the way that people's lives have been changed, and they've had to be isolated and afraid to connect with people, afraid to hug people, children not being able to really relate to each other in a, and create healthy relationships and ways to communicate. I really, it's quite frightening, actually. And there was so much work being done on getting people outside, getting people to join groups, and it all just went, and it's really important that people start to build that back up again. It's crucial.
And I think it's whichever way you choose to do it. I'm going to reference Nancy again. She always makes me smile, and I must connect you two, because I think you two would get on super well. But she has this thing about making sourdough. And she told me the story yesterday that she'd been gifted a sourdough starter something like 12 years ago. And then she was actually teaching communication and something else at one of the universities as a class. And they just weren't picking up. And the professor who she was working alongside, he said, well, what are your hobbies? And she said, oh, I make sourdough. He said, right, I'm going to put it on the curriculum. And she said sourdough classes just like went off the shelf, literally.
Wow.
But she said it all came down to the community and the connection and the kind of kinesthetics of creating this thing together.
Oh, definitely. And that is exactly it. And I think that you've picked up on another point, which is very dear to my heart, in a sense of, or very alive for me in a way of that making your own food and making food together and being a part of that whole process is another piece that our society is really missing. And it's interesting because I feel like it's, I mean, there's definitely pockets anyway of it really making a comeback, and that putting your hands and making food and having those smells in the kitchen and being with other people and sharing it is really so much how we get nourished on a deep level. That's how food nourishes our body and our spirit. And if we just go to the shop and we buy stuff in packets and we're not, one, buying the ingredients, two, getting our hands in it, three, smelling it being cooked in the kitchen, almost in a way that as well is taking out huge pieces of the digestive process, which is again why so many people are suffering from digestive conditions right now, because there's just like this whole preparation of the body that is necessary, that when we start cooking and we're chopping and we're chatting and it's really part of it. And so that's really beautiful. And families cooking like that has kind of always been the piece that almost creates the society, is having that family togetherness, eating together, having that relationship around food and being nourished in that way. It's so important.
It's literally feeding ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And I find it really interesting being here at the moment, and I'm still going out into the garden and I'm going, oh my God, there's more green beans. Oh my God, there's still chilies and tomatoes. And there is something that's so fundamentally exciting to go out and do that. And I think if we can encourage more people to do the most simplest of things, even if it's just growing your own herbs, would you agree that there's something that you connect those physical activities and then they create this brain juice that starts going, oh, this is exciting, I quite like this.
Oh, definitely. Getting people involved in making stuff is so, exactly. Whether it's having a little herb pot in the kitchen or sprouting your own beans or making your own, kombucha or just making food from scratch, it doesn't have to be complicated either. It's really important.
I think that's something dear to my heart that you've just tripped into. It doesn't have to be complicated, because I think a lot of the time we think food prep has to be complicated, which is why I think the great mass hypnotism of the population to go and buy the packets of ready-made meals being made so easy, because we kind of lost this art of, definitely when I was at school, we were still being taught how to make a Victoria sponge, and that's taken me back to being asked to gut a fish, basically refusing to at something like 4 weeks. I just thought it was horrific. But actually I'm really glad that I had that experience to say, oh no, I don't fancy it, I feel sick. But at least I saw it and I understood, well, this is where our food comes from.
No, it's so important. It's so important to know that, because there's such a disconnect between where it comes from. And I'm reading this really beautiful book right now called Braiding Sweetgrass, and she talks about the honorable harvest and how we should never, first of all, we always give thanks and we never take more than we can eat, or never take more than half of what, if you're collecting herbs or never take more than half. And then there was this, I'm going off tangent a little bit, but she was talking about how when the the kind of other people came and they were like thinking that they were being very wasteful because they would only take half of their crops and they would let things fall into the water, and they were like, well, they're lazy, they're not doing, they're not taking it all. these people, the natives there that were doing this, were saying, well, actually, it's not just us, this needs to reseed itself. And what about the birds? And what about the fish? And, like really understanding that great web that we're in, and being so grateful for all of the food that we get provided. And and regardless of whether you go into Marks and Spencer and buy a ready meal or not, that food was still grown by somebody. Absolutely. It was still made by somebody. It was still shipped and packaged, and even that is forgotten. So yeah, I think even if it's just to be grateful for what you've got, even if that's just where you start, I think that's a really, really great place to start making right relationship with food again.
It's a different conundrum, isn't it? We're surrounded by fields where I am, so they have been harvesting and then not so nicely spreading chicken manure over everything and then tilling it in. And for obvious reasons, some of that's been not particularly nice. And actually, I think even last week, it made me feel quite unwell because it was all pervasive, this smell. Yeah, even yesterday when the tractors were going up and down, they're literally across the road. And I was thinking, man, I wish they'd stop. And then I was like, no, actually, I can still be really grateful for that, because A, how lucky am I that I'm living in a place that's surrounded by these fields where literally we're growing, rooting, connecting through that. And then I was thinking about the cycle and other things. And I think it is very much this thing about being grateful no matter what, even if it is the tractors are driving us nuts and the smell is horrific. Because then I was watching all the seagulls and I'm like, we're landlocked in Herefordshire, and there must have been 200 seagulls on this field yesterday.
Yeah.
So that was even then making me think, people moan about the seagulls, but the seagulls are happy, right? The seagulls are doing a purpose. And to me, it made me think about this circle of everything being connected versus what we've become as a society on so many levels disconnected. And I think that goes with what you're saying about, understanding why we might harvest in different ways, why we do some of the things that we do because of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, because people moan about seagulls and they moan about this and that, and and essentially we've created that, and I think people forget that as well. We're chopping down the trees and stopping all of the other birds that would naturally be thriving more, but unfortunately are not, and seagulls that manage to get themselves into our rubbish and trash and really going for it and living really, really well. I mean, who can blame them for it?
Absolutely.
I mean, they're just alongside us, aren't they? So
and they've learned to thrive in an environment that we've changed for them.
Exactly.
And I think what we need to maybe do now is seek a way to re-thrive ourselves. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. And that's the thing, when everything, and that's one of the great philosophies in life, really, isn't it? If something is irritating you, or is you're feeling uncomfortable with it, or you don't like it, it's like, bring it back to yourself. What is that piece in you that's being triggered? And whether it's a seagull and how that is, it's like, okay, well, what can we do to create an environment that actually there's more songbirds rather than seagulls, because that's the way it used to be. Or so yeah, it's very interesting. It is.
I mean, rewilding has taken on a bit of a thing in the UK, and that's going to bring me to talk to you about the tree tribe in Antigua, because I've got to talk about that. Your passion for that and how that started and how you see it going forwards.
Well, I mean, that's just it's just such a organic project of the heart, really, that started a year ago or so now with my partner, and we met and both really wanted to do this, and it just happened. It really was like, okay, like, we want to plant trees together, let's do this. And then exactly, and then it just kind of escalated into this big project, because it was like, okay, well, actually, if we're going to be doing this, we need to kind of name ourselves, and we need to make sure that we're actually creating something that people know what we're doing. And so the Tree Tribe was birthed as such, and the first project was to plant or give away 2,000 fruit trees in Antigua. And so, because the thing is that, you know, growing trees is one thing, but planting is another. And, you know, it's not just the planting, but it's really the maintenance of them. So making sure that they have enough water, making sure that they're not going to be eaten by goats, making sure that they're not going to be, you know, ripped up for development, you know, off sites, all of this stuff. So it's very good to just say, okay, well, we're going to plant all these trees, but they really, you know, they really need to be cared for. And so we thought, right, this first giveaway, we're going to grow them and we're going to give them to the people, because also, you know, that's a lot of the land is now private, and people want more trees, and to really, so they can plant them in their own gardens and take care of them for their, you know, for their children. And so it was about fruit trees as well, so that people can start to come into that relationship of that trees are really providing so much. I mean, they provide way more than just fruit, but, you know, it's a very good direct place that people can start. Yeah. So that was, you know, really successful, really beautiful. And we did a big giveaway. And, you know, as you know, Janice, you were right there helping us as well. And a huge piece, delivering them yourself and off in the truck. And, you know, it was a big, beautiful mission. And the kind of, the response that we got was so great. And not just from the people, but actually from, you know, even the local TV, and, you know, just kind of like a real recognition of, you know, that actually, yes, this is what we need people to be doing this. And that, you know, we call it the Tree Tribe, and it really is about that, of like trying to bring in a tribe, bring in the community. It's not just about, you know, me and Aidan. It's like, okay, it's trying to, how can everybody get involved here? How can everybody put a tree in their garden and make sure that it grows? And
it's literally getting your hands dirty and getting involved and feeling that. I mean, you mentioned that I helped out, and I think I delivered maybe only 3 or 4. But every single person that I delivered to was so passionate and so excited about it. And I was like, oh my God, this is really feeding and nourishing me. Outside of that thing that you're actually doing. And I think that is the thing, it's when you create these tribes and there's something really tangible behind it, that's what grows people's passion.
Exactly. And to, you know, to come in to realize that, wow, you know, we really need to plant trees as well. Like, we're chopping them down so fast. And we, you know, and there's a huge climate crisis, and people are wondering why the rain's not coming. Well, maybe that's because there's not enough trees, and they create this cyclic process of rain, you know. And so, yes, actually, we need to now start making a difference. And if that's planting several thousand trees a year in our little island, if we can make a difference there,
absolutely,
you know, then we're doing our bit. And I think that's what it comes to, is people almost are kind of gone, oh, it's too big and ugly, and what difference can I make? This is just the way the world is now, and it's almost too messed up to make a difference. Well, that's not the case. You know, an individual, and, you know, bringing people together, we really can make a difference. And you know, and if we don't try, then, well, you know, what's the point? There's, you know, one of my teachers in India always says, you know, make sure in this life you always do what you can. Okay, that what you can't do, and you let that go, you know, but what you can do, you do, you know.
That's such a simplistic thing, but it's so right. And that's when people have said to me before, why are you even bothering? And my answer to that will always be, well, why wouldn't I? Because if I'm going to feel better from this, and then I'm going to share that conversation with somebody else, somebody will look at that, somebody will look at what you're doing, and then they might have that little trigger that says, yeah, actually, I'm going to just do that one little thing, and that makes the difference.
Exactly. You know, and it's amazing, like, you go to Antigua and, you know, you sit under a mango tree, and it's beautiful, it's providing a massive amounts of shade. I mean, it gives hundreds of mangoes every year. I mean, that's one tree, you know. Absolutely. So, you know, the amount of monkeys and birds and insects that feeds as well, and you know, it's so beautiful. And it, you know,
just sharing that around. So in terms of the Tree Tribe, what's the next stage in Antigua? Is it just growing more giveaways? And
no, we don't want to do more giveaways. That was kind of our little pilot project as such. Yeah, so we're growing again, and we're trying to move a little bit out of just fruit trees as well, and go into a little bit more, like beautification trees like the flamboyants and also mahoganies. And yeah, the plan is that we're growing them right now, and then by the end of the year we might do a bit more of a reforestation, but we're still kind of discussing exactly what that looks like in regards to whether we would be kind of going under the guidance of the forestry unit, and they would create somewhere up in the body ponds and really be supporting us massively in making that happen in the maintenance, or whether there's some other, there is some other people that we've found that are wanting to do little projects, and maybe we would kind of come in and team up a little bit. But yeah, we're wanting to do a bit more of a significant patch as such, of a mini kind of reforesting this year. That's our plan. So
that sounds like a good plan. Yeah. So I have noticed on your social media that your mum and yourself you're growing little things in England as well. I've noticed. I'm like, yes, it's really
yeah. Well, it's my mum is an avid gardener as well, and she also got really inspired by the tree tribe, and so she's been picking up little acorns that or little oak trees that are basically kind of somewhere that wouldn't thrive, and so their lifespan would be very short, and so she's actually managed to get those, and she's potted them, and the plan is that we're going to take them to Dartmoor and talk to the National Trust about doing a little mini, even if it's 20 oak trees or something. But yeah, so we've got a few, and with the collection's growing, we've got oak trees, and we've got some walnut, and there's some there's some other beautiful trees as well. So yeah, it's really exciting to bring it to England.
It's just made me think that I need to, and I'm going to share it in this conversation. Kath Pay, if she's listening, she's actually in Antigua at the moment, but her daughter Ellie has just moved to somewhere close to Exeter, and she is a top propagator, and she was headhunted to leave Wales. She's just been featured in a bunch of articles. That's making me think I need to sort that connection for you, because that would be a valuable one.
Nice. Yeah.
And she's been all around the world talking about it, and I think she's only 28.
Wow.
And apparently this is her thing, so that's just another connection, because there's always these connections, and that's how we build tribes though, right?
Definitely. Because you can't do it all alone. Yeah.
We have these conversations, a memory gets triggered, and you say, oh yes, I need to connect those two people. So go on. I wanted to ask you, I noticed that you're doing this apprenticeship in all things plants, so I'm kind of intrigued by that, because you're sharing all these wonderful remedies, for want of better words, healings, and it's all coming from the plant world.
Yeah, it's really, it's something that's always kind of wanted to come to me really strong. And yeah, I studied in Chinese medicine, and in England, you don't naturally do Chinese herbal medicine with the acupuncture course. Unfortunately, it's a postgraduate. And so I didn't do the herbs when I was studying, because I would have had to have gone on and, whatever. And then I applied to do Chinese herbal medicine for a year at Westminster Uni as a postgrad, and I got the place, and it was all set, and then they discontinued the course. So before I managed to get there, and so yeah, it's kind of been something niggling at me, and I've always been very interested in plants and going in and making infusions and things, but really wanted to study it and get more, and so I started this herbal apprenticeship with this beautiful sister. She's called Jackie, and I met her in LA a couple of years ago, and she calls herself a wise woman herbalist, which is kind of, there's a few categories, and one of them is really sort of understanding and working with the herbs from a very intuitive way, that you work with the herbs in a very individual, personalized way. You get to know the spirits of the herbs, and you kind of, the simplest method, where you put a little bit of this and a bit of that, and and create all this beautiful magic. And it's funny because although I really wanted to do Chinese herbal medicine, I'm actually so delighted that I'm doing this now, because also I was kind of feeling like, but I don't want to just work with herbs from Asia, because I want to work with herbs in my backyard, because they
Absolutely.
are the power, you know, the ones that are growing in your culture, in your you know, in your environment, are the ones that, you know, really are the most medicinal. And obviously, you know, stopping to so much shipping, and you don't really know the quality of they're mass produced. And anyway, so I'm really, really happy. And it's funny because now I've started doing this course, I'm looking through all my old books, and I've got lots of them, and so many of them are, you know, herbal books and learn herbs and do this. And I'm like, I've been on this for, you know, almost 20 years in a way, but silently kind of. And so now I'm just feeling like my spirit's just gone, oh, I've got permission to do this. I can actually do it. So yeah, I've been just discovering so much in this course, and really working with, you know, the herbs. In making infusions has definitely changed my life. I feel like it's one of the most simple things that anybody can do, is having a huge coffee filter, and, you know, choosing your herbs of choice, whether it's, you know, peppermint or calendula, or, you know, angelica, or nettle or chamomile, or anything that speaks to you, you know, learning roughly what, you know, whether you want to help with relaxing or your digestive system. A lot of them will work, you know, in all ways. And putting the herbs in this and drinking, maybe doing an overnight infusion.
Okay.
And then drinking, you know, that in the morning, or drinking, you know, putting hot water on, depending on what herb you're using. And I drink a couple of those a day now, and it's so wonderful, because they're detoxing, they're nourishing, they're antiviral, they're, you know, antibacterial, they, you know, they open the heart. They're just so beautiful. So that, you know, is a very simple thing that I think a lot of people bringing in more just herbal infusions from either fresh flowers and leaves, or from, you know, dried, and then making herbal oils, infusing them into oils, and making, you know, I just met this beautiful herb called mullein, which we learnt about last week. And then my mum came down with this cough, and it's particularly amazing for a cough. And I said, Mum, have you got this in the garden? And she said, what does it look like? And I explained, it's got very big velvety leaves. And anyway, she's like, I think I've seen it. And we went up to the garden, and it was there sitting next to the sage. So I immediately got brewing and made this, you know, quite a concoction with several other herbs and cardamom and spices and cinnamon sticks, and let it sit overnight, and added honey and made a syrup for her. And, you know, she was going downhill. And, you know, with a cough, you know, if you got some bronchial infection, you can rapidly start ending up having a cough for a couple of weeks. You know, it can be quite, but even after a few days, you know, she's feeling so much better, and the cough hasn't taken hold. And, you know, it's so beautiful. And it's really good for like an ear oil as well. If you have, I know Aidan often suffers from earache, so I've been making a little infusion with olive oil and mullein, and it's very antibacterial. Cool. And it's, you know, thing is with the herbs is that you don't get all of the horrible side effects. You don't, you know, it doesn't affect your microbiome like antibiotics. It, you know, it helps to regulate us on so many levels, and they're free and natural. And it's just opened my world up in such a dramatic and beautiful way. Yeah, I'm just so excited to keep exploring and learning all these allies and friends that are right there outside. You know, when I'm walking, I'm like, am I finding fresh chamomile and nettle and burdock? And like, they're right there, you know, they're right there for us.
I think that's the beauty of it, isn't it? That it's right there, and until our eyes are open and we start to see it, and then we can say. So basically, all the time you've been talking, I've been thinking. So basically, you're becoming like a natural apothecary, as in the old ways, the alchemy of actually seeing what's out there, and then actually using that. So I'm loving the sound of that. It's also making me think of so I'm going to pick your brain. And it may work for somebody else. So, and you may or may not know an answer or recipe. So my mum, who's 77, has this constant thing of bringing up loads and loads of mucus in the morning, specifically, ongoing. And of course, the doctors want to give her other stuff. And I'm like, No, I said, you carry on coughing, you carry on bringing it out of your system, but what's creating it? And it's making me wonder if maybe even what you've just talked about with your mum would be useful for her.
Well, mullein is amazing, particularly, for the lungs and helping to, relieve congestion. And so that herb would be brilliant for her. And you can, a really nice way to take herbs is, rather than having to go out and find it and decoct it and make a potion, which obviously is not going to be everybody's bag, but a tincture is brilliant. And you can buy those and they're wonderful. And so you get the herbs that will then be steeped in alcohol for quite a long time, and then all of their properties come out, and then you just need a little bit in water. And so for somebody that's maybe not used to having herbal drinks and they kind of feel a bit resistant to it, or it feels very foreign, a tincture is a really, really wonderful way to get that in. So that might be something for her.
I will have a look at that, and you can private message me something after this conversation.
Yeah, we can have a deeper conversation about that. Yeah,
that would be really cool. So in terms of, obviously learning about herbs and everything, that feeds back to your love and your passion for food. And I don't think you're all plant-based, are you?
I'm not. I basically am. The only things that I do have is eggs, but I'm very careful to make sure that they are organic and free range. I definitely don't want to be eating, caged hormone eggs. And I do have goat's cheese, and I've recently been having a bit of ghee. So yeah, those are my kind of 3 animal products that I eat. Yeah,
it's interesting because I think there's been such a push, everybody should be vegan, everybody should be this, and I think sometimes that can work against the thing that they want you to do, depending on the way that it's pushed. So since I've been back in the UK, I've been having a tiny bit of dairy. And I'm kind of like, yeah, that feels okay. And still not, the other day I walked past one of our local beef, I'm going to call it a beef burger shop, because it is really, and it's all supposedly organic, local produce. And, and I smell it cooking and I think, oh my gosh, that smells really good. And then I think, yeah, but I don't want to eat it, kind of thing. And I think the more that we start to pay attention to what we're eating and why we're eating and what it's doing for us. So I guess calibration of the way a food makes us feel must be something that you massively talk about with your clients as well.
Oh, definitely. And I think that it's important to remember that essentially none of this food, whether you eat meat or not, is bad, because it's kind of more from where I've come from, is the way that the food is produced, the way that the meat industry is today is, before it would be maybe somebody had a cow in their backyard and they would nurture it. They would have the milk just from that cow. It would be raw, but today mass producing and, the way, I won't go into it because it's a huge conversation and there's too much to go into right now, but there's a lot of reasons to opt out from that, today, aside from just the health. But it's interesting because, some people are more, they respond to eating meat better than others. I don't, I've been vegetarian since I was 8 years old, and I've kind of dabbled a little bit in having some fish, but, I've gone totally off that again because I just think fish is unfortunately so toxic these days. And another thing is the fishing industry. And anyway, but it's interesting because the thing is about being mainly plant-based is that you need to make sure that you are eating a substantial amount, enough, because the calories in it are much less, so you need to make sure that you're having, a good amount of vegetables and salads and, eating beans and having a varied diet, having some good oils and fats, it's very important, which is what a lot of people miss. And my mum, for example, is she's quite slender, and she has a very small appetite, but she eats, but she can't eat a lot at once. And so I've been back with her, and she's kind of going, oh my God, I'm losing so much weight, I'm just like disappearing, because she's eating what I'm eating, but she's only eating half of what I'm eating, right. So she's actually gone, oh, okay, I actually need to have a lamb chop, because she needs that dense calorie, in order to make sure that she's being nourished and built. And I respect that. And I think that that's where it's very difficult to say whether one thing is going to work for, other people or not. And so, yeah, a one piece fits all is definitely not the way it works. That said, I do encourage people to go plant-based, because I do think if you do it properly, it is the most, the healthiest, most nourishing, most rewarding, exciting, way to eat. And it's got so many benefits to it on so many levels that again, that would be a huge conversation, but it's not about but that's the thing, it's not about denying yourself or not having enough. It's like, wow, there's so much more we can do if we really incorporate beans and all these beautiful whole grains and vegetables and fruits and oils and things. You can really create magic, and a lot of it. So yeah,
and it's again about not making it complicated. I think I was listening to a Rich Roll podcast not long ago, and it was the guy he probably is now the mayor of New York, and he's an ex New York cop. He's Black, African American. He had diabetes. By the time he went to the doctor, they were like, there's no return from this. And I think his first thing that he was losing his sight, and that was his thing that made him go to the doctor. And then he apparently took it in a really bad way of, no, this isn't going to happen to me, because half of my family are already got all these issues. And he went home, and instead of putting, I think what he typed into Google was how to cure type 2 diabetes. And he said that was his gift. And basically it shifted him to plant-based. And it was a really interesting conversation, because he's, as I said, an ex-New York cop, and it was fast food and it was this. And he said the first thing that he did was taught himself 10 meals. And he lived off those 10 meals for something like 6 months. Because then he said he was already getting the benefit just from those meals. And then he started to expand from that. And I think that's one of the things with all things, whether it's yoga and meditation. I think sometimes we hang around the edges because it feels like it's too much, and you have to go all in and you have to do it straight away. And I think sometimes it is literally just peel back the edge. Have a little play with it.
Oh, Janice, that's such a good point. It's such a good point. It really is so true, because we think that, oh my goodness, like, I can't do that because but it's just little by little, day by day. You just like, oh, okay, today I'm going to bring in a little bit of cinnamon, and maybe today I'm going to bring in a little bit of cardamom, or I'm going to buy a veggie that I don't normally buy, and I'm going to work with celery or whatever mushrooms or something that you don't normally work with. And it's really, and the thing is that people, now I'm quite creative in the kitchen, and I'll just kind of see what's there, and
I can vouch for that.
But that comes over time. You start by following recipes, and you start buying, okay, and you start to learn with what foods go with what foods, and go, okay, well, this matches this, and this is like a good pairing, and you learn how to cook things, and then from there you go, oh, okay, well, actually I could put this in this instead, and it becomes very natural. That's the thing, you don't have to think it. Like, to start with, follow a recipe and think about it, and just do that, and then after time, our natural intuition, our natural guidance and preferences and all of this will just start to come in, and it's beautiful. I really encourage people to just start there.
I think there's something in going back. So it's made me think, whilst you were saying that, of my mum's sister. My mum's German, so Tante Monica. And when you go to her, she's a massive, she's 80, I think she's 82 or something like that. And her garden is still prolific. It's one of her passions. But most importantly, when you're in Germany and you go into her house, and in her cellar, which nearly all Germans have, there's just jars and jars of pickled anything and everything. So all the fruits, all the peppers that she had, the tomatoes are made into natural sauces. And that thing of growing all these beautiful things, but then knowing what you've put in the jar and preserving it and keeping it for future. So
definitely. And the Germans are brilliant at that, and one of the best things that we can do for our health is to, take care of our good bacteria, which is eating fermented foods. And that includes, making sauerkraut, which is very famous in Germany. And if you have a tablespoon of that every day before your meal, your digestive system is going to thank you for it so much. And to make it, especially, you know, I mean, obviously she's growing it, which is also wonderful, but even if, you know, but having a local vegetable and to get your hands in it, all of that, like working with your hands, the local vegetable, all those in that information from the land and microbiomes also have a big impact. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the secrets for longevity, I think, and she obviously sounds like she's doing it, and that's, you know, one of her secrets. It's
absolutely. And you know, I've been thinking about it. My daughter moved house last September, and you know, she's got raspberries, she's got this amazing pear tree that's just loaded, and apples, and I'm like, okay, what are we going to do with all of these? We're not wasting any of these. And it's all about what can you do with it, so that you can create something that's going to be good for you. And I think, again, it's all about, for me, it's very much, it's the kinesthetic, it's all the feels that come from those things.
Yeah, so, and it's a very good point, actually, is that, you know, the reason why, you know, jams and pickles and chutneys and everything came around was because it was a way of preserving the food. And then we kind of got into the modern age of having shops and refrigerators, and that kind of went out the window. But actually, that, you know, fermented food is very, very good for us. It's really important. And so it's bringing back those ways that, you know, were done out of necessity in a way, but, you know, very cleverly also very important for our health, and bringing them back in. Yeah.
And naturally, right, versus all the numbers and the additives that we see on all of these things.
Yeah.
It's just such a big thing, isn't it? And I think it's like anything, we're getting toxicity from our food, from the things that we drink, from the news, from social media, and it's almost like we need this. If we're on that path, it's how you holistically cleanse yourself from the inside out, and then kind of let that trickle out into the rest of the world, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I really agree with that. And I think that, you know, social media is an interesting one, and it's done great things, but, you know, taking conscious time with it and off it is so important, and making sure that you still allow yourself to just be still and to, you know, meditate and to read, not to, like, if you suddenly got some time, finding yourself defaulting to go on to social media, you know, because it clogs us up, you know, and creates a lot of backlog, and imprinting in our psyches and everything. So it's very important to detox that, and maybe even having some days that you really off it, you know, consciously to detox. Yeah, it's definitely a big one today, finding that balance for people. It's
I've gotten very good at muting and blocking on WhatsApp and Facebook, and just saying, you know, this is going to be my work day. I'm going to reply to clients on these days. I'm going to tell them I'm not going to be available unless it's going to be something really, you know, if it's life threatening, then find a way to get hold of me. But otherwise, this is the space that I need to create for me.
Absolutely.
And I think we all need to do that in our own different ways.
We do. And for me, you know, a big thing was taking off the notifications from my phone, you know, because these iPhones now, you have the apps, they bing up on your phone, you know, and you're constantly this. I was like, whoa. So I took them all off. And so, you know, I have to go into my phone to purposely to go and have a look. And I'm not just like at just a beck and call to it, which has made a huge difference. I highly recommend everybody to do that as well.
Absolutely. I'm aware that we've almost been talking an hour, but I want to talk a little bit about your yoga as well, because that's another part to everything that you offer. So yoga came at a young age as well.
It did, yeah. I mean, not super young. I was probably 16, and I started to take myself off to yoga classes every week, and started to start reading books about India. And, you know, it definitely, that was when I was already starting to study complementary medicine as well. And you know, I was doing more like body work and reflexology and Indian head massage and studying those things then. And then, yeah, it continued, you know, and I kept up with my weekly classes, probably for about 5 years or something, until I finished my studies. And I was, and then I went abroad and I started to work on boats. And that's really when my self-practice started to come into its own, because I didn't have classes to go to anymore. And so I started to go outside in the mornings or the evenings and you know, create my own practice, which was, you know, such a lifeline to me, actually. And then by the end of my, you know, working there, and I was like, no, I need to go to India and I need to learn this properly. You know, I need to really immerse myself into this. And so I took myself off to, by this point, I was already studying Ashtanga for about 3 years, and took myself to Mysore, which is the birthplace of this practice, and studied quite, you know, intensely with a teacher for a month, doing 2 practices a day, which was, normally people would go and do 1, but so yeah, I was quite by the end of that, was
straight into it.
Yeah. So, and then I went around India and did other, you know, work with other teachers in Hatha, and anyway, and then I decided that actually I found this training in Bali, and I was so guided to go there, and I studied a vinyasa training. And then when I was over there, I got offered the job by the yoga studio as to be the acupuncturist. And so I basically moved to Bali, and I started practicing acupuncture there, and then I was teaching some classes, and then I kind of was like, actually, you know, the more my yoga caught up with me and my work, I was kind of seeing people come into acupuncture and, you know, seeing their nervous system so fried, and seeing their body kind of, you know, and I was like, actually, you know, I feel like I need something more therapeutic for my work, and something a bit more in line with, you know, what I do. And so I found this beautiful teacher, Beth Lisboa, actually, and did a study with her about yin yoga. And so that is much more a very meditative, slow, more therapeutic style of yoga that's working very much in line with Chinese medicine, and opening up the meridians and the philosophies. And she, you know, we met, and immediately we were like kindred spirits. And anyway, she basically invited me to come and work with her, and I did some more study with her. And then I ended up, actually, she does yoga teacher trainings, and I actually created a Chinese medicine module, you know, bringing in the philosophies of Chinese medicine. So it started more with the theory, and then as my practice evolved, you know, we ended up traveling India and Bali and Greece together teaching, and so that really, you know, really deepened for me, and it's really, yeah, it's really stayed with me. I still teach with her. We do online trainings now, and so it's just another piece of being able to bring in, again, you know, that deep, rich philosophy of Chinese medicine, but also, you know, working with the emotions, because as we stay in these postures, you know, we really get to meet ourselves, and also the hidden places that this, you know, these emotions get stuck in our tissues and our joints, you know, they actually, you know, have space and time to come out, which is, it's so beautiful. And I still have, you know, my dynamic practice, and I love, you know, I still love my hatha and vinyasa yoga, but definitely what I love to teach more is the yin. Yeah, so I mean, still on a deep journey with that always as well.
Awesome. I love it, this whole alchemy of all these things that you've brought together. And you can see that you're just flourishing in it, which is wonderful. And for people to listen and see that and think, you know, if that person can do that, then I can do that, kind of thing.
Oh, definitely.
Towards whatever my passions are, and see how I can create this alchemy of things that just fill me.
Oh, totally, Janice. And, you know, and I've definitely had a few conversations with myself of going, am I doing too much? Do I need to really just pick something and like forget doing that? But it's like, no, I still, you know, to move your body, to practice, to meditate, to work with food, with herbs, with energetic medicine, like it's all, and it's slowly just building. And I really, really encourage people to not hold back. If they have a passion, you know, I've met some beautiful, like my teacher who I'm doing the herbal apprenticeship with, she's a belly dancer, an astrologer and a herbalist, and she brings all of that in. And, you know, like how
dynamic would that be?
Beautiful, exactly. And another friend of mine who actually, she was a student on the last training, and she was always into pottery, and then, you know, and she got really called into yin yoga, and now she calls her company Pottery and Yoga, and she's combining all of this, you know, like it's like, how we can learn to express ourselves and really connect into, you know, ourself in such a deeper way, and understanding it, you know, there's no limits. You don't have to put yourself in a box. You really
I love
don't.
that. It's kind of following your intuition and your creativity, and then melding it into whatever you choose.
Exactly.
And I guess the whole thing is, if you like it, you know that actually other people will. And then
Yeah.
it's just a matter of finding the way to connect. And
yeah, and also it's a matter of, you know, people kind of request it, you know, like I'll find that, you know, if I mean, I'm doing something, but it's also the response from people kind of wanting to know more, or wanting to understand, or to, you know, and that sort of, and that's where in a way I do a 6-week mentorship program, and that's kind of come from combining all of this together and knowing that actually, you know, yes, working with somebody for an hour for an acupuncture treatment is incredibly transformational and useful, and yet it's where the rubber hits the road when they get home, and giving them the tools to really create this more holistic way of life, which is why, you know, working with somebody more longer term, and, you know, allowing them to find their own expression in these different modalities themselves, is where, you know, real deep transformation in life that's more sustainable and, you know, lasting, will occur, I think, you know.
Yeah, you led that perfectly, because I was thinking at the end of this I'm going to ask you about how people can connect with you and work with you, and you mentioned the mentorship. So do you want to give some details here of how they can find you on social media, and then they can come and explore and say,
Yeah,
I love that conversation, I need to know more.
Oh, nice. I appreciate that. Yeah, I work, I mean, predominantly I work with women, just because I am a woman, so I understand what it is to be a woman more than I do a man. It's not that I'm, you know, of course, if a man did approach me and really, really felt called, I would definitely, you know, have that conversation. But really, I work with women, and I work with them for 6 weeks. And, you know, it's a very holistic, very personalized program where, you know, we'll come and we'll meet and we'll do a 3-hour deep consultation about what it is their main health goals and what they're wanting, and we'll go from there together, you know, organically, and it's very beautiful. So yeah, you can find me on, I don't know, are you going to send some links, or shall I just say them?
You can say them if you want, and then you can give me all your links and things that you want me to share. And when it goes out, I'll attach all the links and everything there as well. So
I mean, maybe the easiest place to go is just go to my website, which is zoenash.com. Probably is like, keep it simple. And then
that's really easy. And we'll put all the links for everything else.
Yeah.
All your wonderful posts.
Yeah.
Because, you know, your social media with all your different alchemies of different things that you're creating. Visually, people will get excited, and then they'll read, and then they're like, oh my God, I want to try this.
Yeah, no, that would be great. So, and I have a bit of a vision as well, which is coming, and it just takes a bit of work and sitting behind the computer as well to create it, but a 6-month apprenticeship of my own, which would be a journey into the 5 elements, and going more into, you know, everything that we've discussed. And so, because more people want to learn about Chinese medicine and how they can incorporate that into their life as well. So that's kind of in the pipeline, maybe for 2022.
Oh, that's something to look forward to in 2022. There's always going to be something to look forward from you, because of the way you're working, which is awesome. Thank you ever so much for spending the time with us. And I know that people will be really grateful to listen to this conversation.
Oh, Janice, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. It's so nice to chat to you. And thanks for inviting me, and everybody listening.
Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Yeah. Big hugs. Lots of love.
You too. Take care. Bye.